All right, guys. This is our next installment of the AIDL Office Hours. Here today, we are lucky to have Drew Volpe and Sara Faye. Um, we will. That was just Jason texting. So we will jump straight in with their background, and we've got a bunch of questions to cover. It'll be an exciting hour. So please, without ado, let's get into some bios and introductions.
Sure. I'm Drew Volpe. I'm a managing partner at Procyon Ventures. We're an early stage fund based here in Boston that's focused on applications of data and machine intelligence. We're a seed stage fund. We're typically the first institutional money in. Before becoming an investor, I spent more than a decade as a programmer and CTO and founder of a bunch of companies in database systems, predictive analytics, and AI. So I was on the founding team of a company called Semantic Machines that makes a voice-based conversational platform. Before that, I started a company called Locately that used location data from people's phones to understand where they were going in the world and what they were doing. And then before that, I was on the team at Endeca that made a large-scale database system that's very good at working with semi-structured data. Based on all those experiences, really wanted to get to a chance to work with a lot of different startups. So 3 years ago, co-founded Procyon. We're on our second fund. We've done 18 investments. And again, all things around data and machine intelligence, typically applied to enterprise problems.
Great, awesome.
Okay, and I'm Sara Faye. I am a managing director at a relatively new firm in Boston called Glasswing Ventures. I joined about a year ago. Regina Cesari and Rick Rinnell, who are the founding partners, and we saw the opportunity to create a new firm to focus 100% on AI technology startups. So we've established ourselves as a Series A firm, and we are looking across the board at all types of AI companies with a particular focus in cybersecurity, and then a myriad companies focused on various business problems using AI to solve them. My career previous to then, the biggest chunk of my career was as an executive in the advertising industry. I was an entrepreneur and CEO that launched and ran marketing and technology services businesses, here in Boston and then across the U.S. And I was ultimately CEO of Aegis Media North America, which is about a 2,000-person organization with 11 business units. After I left Aegis in 2009, I got involved with the startup community and have sat on boards of marketing and technology companies and got very familiar with the AI and programmatic spaces. So this is a continuation of a strategy for me, but it is a new opportunity as well to become a venture capitalist.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the intros. We'll start with something maybe more broad, and then we'll get into some of the specific questions and your viewpoints. I think one of the key things is that you guys come from very sort of different fields, but respectively, in ad tech and then in databases and search. AI is such a broad term, and there's so many applications. When you guys think about where the applications are going to be in the short, medium, long term, with respect to all the hype and overhype that we've been seeing in the last 2 years, where do you guys see the low-hanging fruits are?
Yeah. So, you're right, it runs the gamut. So there is AI that is fully being deployed today and has been for a while. I can cite, some of the companies that I work with. X+1, which sold to Rocket Fuel a few years ago, was an AI concept that was built 12 years before I joined the board, probably early for its time. But that is a programmatic solution that is able to sniff out and scale lookalike audiences, and basically the tool does the planning for you. If you set the data rules, it's very advanced in the AI space. They didn't sell themselves as AI way back when because it wasn't meaningful to a lot of people.
Right.
A couple of other companies I work with, Social Flow and Celtra, are using AI technologies today. But, obviously there are other things that AI will be able to do for us. We're talking a little bit about voice. There's facial recognition, there's palm recognition, fingerprint recognition, all types of visual recognition that are early and really just starting to have use cases and value. And then, lots of areas too where the chip technology is just starting to make it possible to do the kind of data crunching that, these algorithms can really put to use. I think that that's where life is getting exciting. There are a number of these types of algorithms that have the opportunity today to start to make a difference once they're fully trained. And I think that in most cases, what we're looking at are, business solutions, narrow AI that solves a very specific pain point or problem, and has the opportunity to mature within a 3 to 5 year period.
So we definitely have to put a pin in this, because I think your last line is important as far as people who are looking at near term, what is fundable and what is not. And we'll get back to that in a bit. Drew.
Yeah, so when I think about AI, I think there's really 3 ingredients that make it successful. You need to have really interesting and good data sets. You need to have good algorithms for working with that data. And you need to have the right amount of computation and power to actually process it. I think where we look for interesting opportunities is where one or more of those has had some interesting changes that allow us new superpowers. So you mentioned voice. A big part of this wave of voice is that, starting 3 or 4 years ago, we started applying deep learning to voice-to-speech recognition. And these days, ASR is all neural network based. And that's made it a ton better. We've gone from 92% accuracy to 96.7%. And that leap has made a huge difference. It's partly the algorithms, it's partly we can collect way more data than we could before. Google has such an amazing way to collect data from every Android user that just gives them such a huge data set that they can do this. And so I think that's the ingredients we look for in good spaces. One place we've been looking a lot recently is drug discovery. Because there's a similar property where we have way more data on biology and chemistry and clinical data than we've ever had before. And that's starting to be the ingredients for making the process of finding new therapies way more efficient. I think there's still work to do on the algorithm side. People are trying to apply deep learning really, really hard to drug discovery, and most of it hasn't been that successful yet. But we'll get there. We'll start to develop new techniques, and as that happens, I think that ends up being a really exciting space. So as we look at spaces, that's kind of the ingredients we look for, is those 3 things.
Right. What's interesting too is that some of these algorithms are very strong, and they have such a good basis for how they were developed that they can be applied so many different ways. I was talking to a company recently that is using the same algorithm to tell women what kind of skincare products they should use by looking at their faces, and also working, with the CIA on, things in the Mideast. They're so different. And I think that one of the things that companies developing these types of algorithms will have to do is figure out what commercial application should I point myself toward to really develop a marketplace and to be able to brand what I have to sell as well.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some common themes, some overlap in how you guys look at investment opportunities. Maybe on the flip side, are there any ideas of businesses that's AI related that when you guys see that you guys just basically say not interesting, it's out? Any themes there?
One general space I think is really, really hard is developing new frameworks or core algorithms. The pace of, I think it's part of what's made this wave of AI so exciting is so much of it is happening out in the open in a way that's never happened before. A new paper from Google or Baidu or Facebook will come out. It will be published with the algorithm, with the code, sometimes even the data. And so it's so easy to keep on top of what's happening. But it's also meant that the open source tools we have, as well as the platforms like Google and Amazon have, are so amazingly good that I think it's really hard for startups to compete on that kind of core fundamental platform layer. And the ones that do, I just think those are really, really tough. It's tough to compete with TensorFlow. It's tough to compete with those platforms.
No, that's interesting. So, yeah.
Trying to stay open, but a little bit to the same thing. There are a lot of big players out there, Google and Facebook, obviously in the marketing and advertising space. And you just want to be careful about getting into something that they can also do. Because let's face it, they're all about AI now. They have huge teams that are developing their own solutions, and you just want to make sure that you're not getting into a space that they already have their eye on.
Yeah. And not just the teams, but they have such a huge leg up in the data sets. Particularly anything in advertising, competing with Google means competing with the huge amount of data that they can generate every day.
Right.
I mean, they have 1 billion people using Android, and that's just such a huge amount of data that they have access to.
Yeah, so one of the themes I think we're hearing here is, AI, while it's algorithmic, but really the fuel that you guys look for is the data, right? And it sounds like it's proprietary data. Question is, do you have a big enough data set, or do you have a system where you can actually grab and update a proprietary set of data that only you would have over time? So I think that's interesting, because I think that's a common topic and theme that we talk about in the group. The other piece, I think, you guys are early stage investors, so team is really important. How do you, so there's certainly sort of a set of investors that have sort of taken the tack of, if you did not apprentice under Jeffrey Hinton or any of the 4 or 5 major guys, you're not as fundable. That might be an extreme. But AI does have, I would say, the sort of the folks who've been in it for years and kind of knows the in and outs, and then the guys who are just getting up to speed in the last few years, but could do some damage. How do you think about sort of team composition, team pedigree, if you will, when you think about funding companies in this space?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it's really important. And in a VC's world, ideally, you're talking to a team that's done it before. That's when you talk about a fundable team, previous success, having the playbook, having the contacts and the employees that they can cherry pick back into the organization is a huge advantage. And it's something that gives confidence for a very good reason. Outside of that, if that doesn't exist, because in some cases, those types of people will self-fund, a good amount of the way, or bring in, strategic money as they want it. They have their choices of VCs to go to, typically. You look for a team that has dynamism, that can market and sell as much as they can, build a compelling product. You want to look for cohesiveness in a team, and you want to know that there are people you can get along with too. So there's a lot of dynamics between the investor and a team, just in being able to do a mind meld and have similar philosophies. But I would say, great technology that doesn't have the kind of team that you feel like can pivot and see around corners is not enough.
So I have a different philosophy on some of this. I'd say in terms of experience, if you look at the data, actually, second-time founders have a higher chance of success, but by a reasonably small amount. And it's something I think is valuable, but I think particularly in new spaces where there's brand new technologies, one of the things that makes our job, I think, so much fun is tech is changing, and every time is different, and you kind of are rewriting the rules. So, we're pretty excited about brand new, fresh teams. I think in terms of AI expertise, what we do look for, more than someone who, happened to be a grad student of Andrew Wing or Jeff Hinton or somebody, I think is someone who has really strong understanding of the mathematics and algorithms behind AI. And it's way easier than ever before to develop that. And sometimes if people have come out of left field, I mean, you can go online and you can take Jeff Hinton's deep learning class. I did that on Coursera. It's great, and you can do it from your house wherever you live. You can then take Andrew Ng's class. You can go grab TensorFlow and build some real world projects. But I do think these technologies can be really hard to apply, and it's not so much I think any reasonable programmer can go grab an open source framework and make a reasonably good image tagger. But someone who can make something really great in a brand new domain with messy data and not quite enough data, and understands how to tune the hyperparameters and make a really great system, I think those folks are rare. I think that's a rare skill set we do look for in the team. Do we always need to have it? No, not necessarily, but it's certainly, I think, those teams have a real head above other teams, and that's something we look for. I'd say the other thing we like a lot is, most of the, I think, successful startups we're looking for tend to be very vertical. They tend to understand their domain really well. Someone in, drug discovery who, has been at one of the large pharma companies, has a PhD in bioinformatics or biology, really is deep in terms of understanding the customer and the domain, and then has learned enough about machine learning to apply new outcomes to that problem. But those are kind of the unique people we're looking for. In our portfolio, we're investors in a company called Resolink that uses machine learning to give people better visibility into their supply chains. So if there's a fire in an important port city, you can understand what does that mean for your production run in 6 months from now. Are you going to have to reroute things to different suppliers? Which should you route them to? So they collect tons and tons of data. They apply algorithms on top of that to help people make those decisions. One of the things we loved about the team is the CEO is India is a phenomenal entrepreneur who comes out of supply chain. She's never started a company before, but you can see she's done a lot of entrepreneurial things in supply chain. She's a master's from MIT in supply chain, and she just lives and breathes that world. You could really feel it when you were talking to her about her product. Like, she was really passionate about solving it. And so that's kind of what we look for, is a combination of really strong technology along with really understanding the vertical. Because I think those together, making a full solution is where we see the most successful startups.
Those are good points. And I'll also note, Drew is a seed investor, and you probably make more investments, across a broader plane. We're Series A. I guess we do also have the advantage of knowing, whoever we're investing in has already built a product and is already selling a product.
Actually, let me start on that point. So for a lot of the audience, even sometimes I get confused, what is seed and what is Series A? Because the definition changes over time.
And it's changing.
In terms of check sizes per deal, how much do you guys, what is sort of the average or the target?
So our sweet spot is 3 to 5 million, but in attaining a 20% ownership after the beat, putting our pro rata in. So we have a pretty precise area of where we want to get into a company and how much we want to own. We want to have, a lead position or a co-lead position and a seat on the board, and we plan to participate in the success of whatever company that we invest in. A little bit for seed, and seed is changing as you say. I think seeds are getting bigger. And so there are situations where we recognize we'll probably have to be first institutional money in, and so be part of the seed, and then that's what will make us part of the end.
We're earlier. I think we're pretty traditional seed investors. We do typically 500K checks in a round that's anywhere from 1 to 2. Excuse me, 1 to 2 million.
I'm sorry to stop you. You were saying just that before.
So the other thing that Drew said that really spoke to me as well, and we also feel this way, is that you do look for very strong technology leadership. So the thought leader, someone like you, and you, Drew, who were founders of companies, who were the thought leaders who came up with the technology that they built and ultimately sold. it's harder to find those
Yeah.
people than a good CEO.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, even though a CEO is very key, and somebody who you will count on helping to make the company succeed, and you
Yeah.
really ultimately do want a team that will stay together, that technology leadership is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it feels like you gotta have the domain expert. You gotta have sort of the smarts. It could be academia. It could be it's not a whole lot of commercial, but so be it, right? Excuse me. So a lot of it. So having that combination within the team, it sounds like it's really important for you guys. You guys look at some of these things. Now, going back to sort of the staging again, maybe I think it would be worthwhile, given we have a lot of technologists in the audience. As they think about Series A, you got a team, you got a demo, you got a product that's out. What are the proof points, right? Let's say you've got an awesome team. The market size seems interesting, or it's big enough, like a bunch of major check boxes.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need to see? First to Drew, in terms of seed, and then to you in terms of Series A, in terms of the milestones that you would expect them to have before you guys are able to say, I like this deal, I like the team, let's bring it back to the partnership for the partnership meeting. What does that bar look like? Just parameters to it.
Yeah, and I do think it's very different C to A.
Yeah.
I think it's changing too, where I think the difference between the two rounds is changing a lot.
Yeah.
For us, we're pretty flexible. I think we're looking for a really strong team. We're looking for some demonstrated ability to execute.
Yeah. So, but past successes potentially.
Past successes, ideally have a prototype or have some initial proof points that show, okay, this team can build things, and just some evidence that what they're doing will actually be successful.
Yeah.
And then we like some evidence that this is going to be a big market. So that could be there's an existing product in the market that we think they can be way more successful than.
Yeah.
Or we've done some references with customers where we've heard from a number of people that if this works, they'll actually buy it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really all they're looking for. All we're looking for. In some cases, our most recent investment, the team had basically nothing. It was two guys who had done some research, had kind of proven out while they were at a large enterprise that this system actually worked. And they were going to leave and go kind of build it the right way for a lot of people. And that's part of, seed investors, that's for us part of the fun is like helping people found the company, incorporate, set everything up from day zero. I will say one of the things we do look for though is, every company we invest in, the bar for an A is getting so high that we do try to think about, okay, are they raising enough money to have enough proof points to get an A done? So we want to know if they execute on this plan, is someone like Sara going to come along and say, wow, this is really amazing. Here's 5 on 25 to keep it going.
Yeah. So a few things. One is the team, and we've already talked about that. 2 is, Drew said it as well, a really big market opportunity, and we're trend watchers. You generally are going to see more than one thing heading toward the same marketplace or solution, and you want this to be the one that is the most barrier-free. There are a lot of people who come up with new solutions that require new processes on the other side in order to take advantage, behavior change. So, is behavior changing enough that the door is open for this kind of solution,
right.
And can it run? And usually there are examples that we have to look at, client relationships.
Right.
What are they helping companies achieve?
Yeah.
What kind of pain
Right.
points?
So
are
they would need to
addressing?
be revenue positive, right?
Yeah, some
Ideally.
revenue. They
Yeah.
have usually.
Yeah.
They've built something and they've managed to get a couple clients through the door, enough that there is, a really good reference
Right.
point for them, where they've actually moved the needle
Right.
for a client, not just a little bit over in a corner, but somewhere that can actually make a massive impact to overall results on the client side in a B2B solution. I think B2C solutions are really hard.
Yeah.
because that's like boiling the ocean.
Yeah.
You're just, it's a different type of opportunity. You're looking at every once in a while they come along. I mean, I know, my partner Medina is an investor in Jibo.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting one. It's more consumer focused. Amazon and Google are paving the way with that type of behavior change. This will be the next wave of really social interaction with robots. That's an interesting opportunity, but you really have an opportunity to know with a B2B solution fairly quickly whether it's going to have an impact. And in some cases, I've seen some algorithms, I've seen some applications where the impact is quite large. So, that's exciting to me.
Yeah, no, this is, I think every 2 weeks someone tells me of an application that's non-obvious. I'm like, yes, of course, there's an application here. No, that's interesting. So we've talked a bunch about sort of what you guys look for, what are some of the near term. I'm curious to kind of hear a little bit more longer term, right? As far as venture market is concerned, as we think about the 5-10 year arc, AI is going to be verticalized into a lot of these verticals that we talked about. What are some of, you think, your investment challenges as you think about that arc evolving over the next 5-10 years? Do you think your thesis would change it? So how do you guys think about sort of the longer term about investing in the AI field?
I'd say, in general, venture is going through a big transition where it's always been a services business, but I think increasingly it's much more about how you help the companies than just the money. There's more and more angel investors. There's platforms like AngelList where you can go raise money. In the blockchain space, there's now ICOs where you can raise money from an individual set of people, just kind of without any dilution, without any pain in the butt investors on your board. So there's all these options for funding. So one of the things we think a lot about is how are we able to best help our startups. So I think having founded a bunch of companies and been involved with a bunch more, we can be pretty helpful in helping 3 people with an idea incorporate, get their first customers, and just help them to shepherd them through the process of how do I get from day 0 to a year and a half later with a real company and real customers. Secondly, we spend a lot of time helping our companies with recruiting. So we have pretty deep networks in the areas we care about. So machine learning as well as kind of sales and marketing going with that. And that's a key part of kind of the first year. And then thirdly, we try to help our companies a lot with partnerships and sales. I think if we can bring them 2 really great initial customers, we've really added a lot of value. So as the market continues to evolve, I think firms like us, we look to be not so much money, but we actually look to be service providers for startups.
Yeah, I would say similar. That's why we chose to focus on AI. It's ultimately, not just so we can catch the value wave, but so we can attract the right kind of deals and have the right kind of connections and be a part of the ecosystem with AI. In terms of 10 years out, I feel like we've got a pretty long runway. We are at the cusp of a changing marketplace. I don't think that anyone is really even envisioning what life is going to be like once AI is embedded in everything. It's going to be a completely changing experience, and we just don't even know yet, right? It's like ahead of the smartphone, everyone was talking about marketing on phones as being kind of crazy because who would want to get a message on that little flip phone? And it kind of took some paradigm changes for us to even understand that. Okay, that's the thing. Or with social, that incredible wave that happened and all the behavior change that came with that. So I think that it's hard to even know. We don't know what we don't know. We know it's going to change, and it's going to be fast-paced. And even some of the things that are interesting today may be disrupted because I think that the pace of change is accelerating. It's exponential change, like Ray Kurzweil talked about.
Yeah.
So I just think that we all kind of have to stay loose and, respond to what the marketplace offers, and there's going to be winners and losers. I mean, just because this is going to be a huge marketplace doesn't mean every company is going to be a winner.
Yeah.
So we still have to be very vigilant about, what's happening in the marketplace and be discriminating about the types of ideas we go with.
I mean, one long-term trend I will say is I don't know that I view AI actually as a space or kind of a vertical. It's really a technology.
Yeah.
And the way I tend to think about it is it's a new way of programming. So most programs today you have a coder who sits down, comes up with all the rules of exactly how things should work. The great thing about a machine learning system is you just create a bunch of well-structured tag data, you put it in, and magically you get the system that answers your question. And so I think what's happening is that machine learning as a technique, as a technology, is replacing a lot of parts of software. And so everywhere we have software today, I think machine learning will erode and make those systems way more powerful. Yeah. And I do think, the same way you don't really invest in software startups today, like that's just a silly statement. I think 5 years from now, it'll be the same thing for AI startups. Like every startup will be an AI startup, the same way, even bookstores and retailers and every large company is a software company today.
Yeah, it'd be so embedded. I mean, it sort of reminds me of like, you're in circa 1995 and you're a VC, you're like, we are starting to invest in internet companies. Like there's this thing called web. Right now, everything is web, right? More or less. No, that's true. That's an interesting statement. One of the other things is pivoting a little bit to location. We have, by my last count, I think, 21,500 people are spread across 130 plus countries. So it's fairly diverse. And one of the common questions that I get asked and people ask is, hey, I'm not in any of the major centers of ecosystems of funding and money, San Francisco, Boston, New York, London. Now, this is not unique to AI per se. Any startups, if you're not in any of the major ecosystem centers, you have trouble. So maybe this is a more generic question. If there's a person in the audience today that's hacking some cool stuff in AI, but he is not in any of the major cities, and want to start a company, what would be your advice?
I would tell him to move.
Okay.
If he thinks he's going to be more successful somewhere else, you got to do what you got to do for your company.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it is hard. I don't think the Bay Area has a monopoly on great ideas or the only place you can start companies. But certainly, if you're far removed from a community of people doing interesting things with technology, also if you're far removed from your customers, that's a big obstacle for you. One of the things I like about Boston, for example, is access to a lot of great life sciences companies, and a lot of good pharma companies here, like Novartis and AstraZeneca and all those guys, as well as a lot of advanced manufacturing IoT companies like PTC and General Electric and those things. And that's a huge asset for startups here. Yeah. When I founded my company, one of our early customers was Panera Bread, because they were 5 miles from us. Yeah. Another early customer was P&G, because Gillette's headquarters was about 500 meters from us. And that's a huge advantage. And I do think people can, I think, tiptoe around it because they want to say, hey, you can do a great startup wherever you are. But I don't know that really is true. I think being part of a great ecosystem has tremendous value.
Yeah. It may not be possible for somebody who's just starting out to move, but many countries now do have startup communities, so you could at least begin with that. Eventually, you're probably going to have to move, but you don't necessarily have to move to the U.S. either. Like London is a hotbed of AI development.
I mean, Toronto, Waterloo, Beijing, there's a lot of, great centers today.
And I can name a lot of companies in the U.S. That came from other countries. Skype, came from Estonia. But eventually, you're probably going to, maybe not yourself, but you're going to have to set up offices in the U.S. As an investor myself, I'm interested in technologies that I've had some come to see me that are actually, doing business in India and have, a certain amount of viability and their algorithms are working, but until they get that few accounts in the U.S., I'm going to remain skeptical. I want to see a company that is getting traction here as the biggest marketplace, and as the marketplace that I happen to be focused on. There are certainly other investors in other places that will consider investments in companies in their own companies.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I think it is moving. If it's possible, it's great. But if it's not, I mean, my other advice that I've told some folks here is, if you can't do it, take a half step. The half step might be either good enough, join a Google or Facebook, get into the right role, and then get transferred to London, Toronto, US, and then decide the remaining half step.
Right. If you're lucky enough to live in China or Japan or some of these other big Asian companies too, there's just as much AI development happening there in lots of different ways. It's funny how it's taking different shape in some of these other countries too. And in some cases, we are borrowing from them now. So
China is a great example of all the cool stuff those guys are doing. So, definitely, I think there's some bias in coverage sometimes when trade journalists cover AI. They tend to obviously cover us, but we don't hear a lot of the stuff going on in China. And I do a little bit of digging, as I'm sure you guys have as well, to see what's at the cusp of onward. Some really cool stuff going on in China.
They're ahead of us in some categories, like the bot marketplace, conversational marketing. E-commerce is woven in. It's Facebook would like to be WeChat. I think that's what's next for them is to develop in that.
All right, we're gonna change tack a little bit because we've got some live questions, so we're gonna go through maybe a couple of them. So let me see. We're doing this live, and okay, here's one. This is fairly specific. Throw it out there. As a startup, this is coming from Harvey Woods. As a startup working in the intersection of blockchain and AI, are there any ventures out in the market that you are excited about?
At the intersection of blockchain and AI. So we're investors actually in one blockchain company, a company called Saya that makes a distributed storage system powered by blockchain. So it's kind of like Airbnb, but for cloud storage. If you have a data center and you have an extra terabyte of space, you can rent that to other people. And if you want to store your data, it will get encrypted, shredded, and put on lots of people's hard drives. And they have a token, their own cryptocurrency that enables those to happen, and it happens via smart contracts on a blockchain. And those contracts allow you to do all sorts of cool things, like if I'm renting out my host, I actually put up a deposit, so if I go away, suddenly I lose that deposit. So it incents me to make sure my computer stays on and it doesn't go offline if you're looking for your data. That's, I think, one example of using blockchain in a pretty pragmatic way. I think there's a lot of blockchain companies that are still figuring out exactly how to use the technology, because like AI, it's new and exciting. The place where I think it's most interesting, where those two I think come together the most, really is the data sets. Blockchain is a great way to exchange and store data between two parties that don't need to trust each other. And I think, if you think about all the data in the world, there's a lot of data sets like that. There's a long way to go for it to happen, but you can imagine a lot of health and clinical data fitting that model, where as a patient, my hospital, my EMR system has tons and tons of very private information about me. I had very little control over that. And in many cases, I actually probably would like to give it to a pharma company for research, but there's no good way for my doctor and hospital to kind of get my consent. And things like blockchain could enable much better sharing and also control of those kinds of data.
That's good. Sarah, have you seen any blockchain?
Yeah, I actually, this was an earlier stage company than one that we would invest in, but there was a company called Monograph. I actually haven't talked to them for a few months, but they were using blockchain technology to help publishers know that the content that they were using was approved content. So it's really just sort of like a good health check, and it also helped people who were creating content to be paid for the content that was being used by publishers. And it's a great business application that's not being fulfilled. There's AI technology because of the image recognition that's being used.
I think we'll see a ton more. I mean, given that initial coin offerings now are kind of a brand new thing. That's just in the last month actually has been changed a lot to be really successful. I mean, there's one coming up for Filecoin that is going to be the first one that is probably completely legal and above board, and I think that way of raising money is really compelling to entrepreneurs.
And right, this is sort of similar to the other story. So this is presumably it's a storage service, and people are incented. So you earn tokens if you become a node.
Right.
Yeah.
But the exciting thing about it is if you have a token, you can, instead of getting money from investors who take equity, you can simply say, okay, I'm starting this project, anyone who wants to buy into it can. And in many cases, people are raising 10, 20, 30 million dollars and doing it quickly and easily.
Blockchain is exciting because there's so many different applications. I went to a workshop that IDEO held at Harvard, and there were something like 40 tables, and they gave every table, randomly a different industry and a different application, and everybody had to come up with a business idea for that. I mean, it's, there's just thousands of permutations of businesses that are blockchain.
No, I mean, I think you can build, if I'm not mistaken, a lot on Ethereum right now. So you actually don't even, that's the platform, right? So I think it's with the ICOs driving some of the demand. Let's hope that the SEC doesn't shut this down anytime soon. Feels like a loophole, doesn't it? So here's another question from Arthur. So Arthur asked, it feels like these days every company is putting AI in their name. Just like back in the day, if you weren't a web company, you put an I or an E in front of your name, and it does feel that way. He's curious how essentially how many of the companies that come over the transit to you guys are true AI versus sort of not really. They just kind of added that name. I guess as part of the context is also for a lot of the audience is going back to noise, right? I think a lot of people are sort of trying to do a little bit of a mini pivot, get a little bit of a bump in the premium, and say, we do machine learning, and is that just a fool's errand? Should people just cut it out and just not do that? Because I mean, come on, you guys are smart, right?
It's pretty bold to put AI in your name and
not do that much AI.
Technology. I don't know that I've seen that, but I definitely do hear a lot of companies talking about AI as part of the business model, and in most cases they are doing something to incorporate AI into the business model, but it's more of a feature versus core to the business. And I would say too that of all in the marketing industry anyway, there's lots and lots of programmatic technologies, and some of them are fairly rudimentary. And you can call it machine learning, or I would say that they're really going beyond to call it AI, because it's really just using fairly basic data sets to automate some functions.
I ignore that word when you see it in pitches because I think it's lost on meaning. I think everyone throws it on their deck. In some cases, I remember there's one startup I drilled into what they had, and what they meant by AI is they had someone throw some data into scikit-learn, and they were using a simple support vector machine. And I think it creates a bad conversation because when we figured it out, it's like, okay, well, why did we go down all this focus on AI? Like, you may have an interesting company here, let's just talk about what's the problem you're solving and how you're doing it. That's way more important.
So guys, save your. I think AI domains are like $90. They're not cheap. So save your $90 and just buy a $8.99 domain on GoDaddy.
I do think the .ai domains are going to be dated. I think it's going to be like the .ly domains.
That's right.
I do think in 5 years, it will just.
Too many, the pendulum will swing backwards. Right?
It'll be really dated. It'll really feel like
Go with the good old .com, guys.
Yeah.
Seriously. All right, next question, Jason Berg. Okay, Mr. Berg asks, so we've covered this, but maybe I'll give a slight tweak to it. So Jason's question is this, two questions. In the fundraising activity we're seeing, what are the most common verticals that are realizing the application of AI and machine learning? Second question is, which verticals stand to benefit the most from AI and machine learning?
So you probably have a better answer just because you're seeing a lot at the early stage. I mean, I think a really common one is healthcare, although that happens to be one that we're not involved with. But it
So
feels
Sara,
like
you guys
that's,
don't look at AI applied to healthcare companies.
there are some very specific
Yeah.
funds that do that, and I know that you guys have you're in some things that.
So,
makes
I mean,
it
just because we're in
relevant.
Boston, we spend a lot of time looking at
Yeah.
healthcare and life sciences, but I think I've realized most of it is not a good fit for us as a fund. I think doing things in healthcare IT is really, really hard for startups. Selling to hospitals, selling to insurance companies.
It's highly regulatory.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
and
regulatory,
it's not to
the
say
sales
that
cycle takes 18 months. I'd say in addition, we tend to stay away from things that require FDA approval, so things like devices.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes machine learning systems for doing diagnoses. Those actually do require FDA approval.
Beyond that, we're seeing, obviously cybersecurity. I think that's the biggest category,
Yeah.
and that's what you've probably seen the most of.
Yeah.
General software, business software. I happen to come from the marketing space,
Yeah.
so a lot of the deals that come my way,
Yeah.
because of that, are in marketing and advertising technology. I don't know, we're seeing things from across the board. It's really.
What's your take on marketing and ad tech right now? It seems like it always goes through waves.
Yeah.
And right now it seems like it's really out of favor with investors.
Yeah.
Which sometimes means that's a great time to start a company. Like, what would you tell founders? Like, is this a good time to swing in ad tech, or is it not?
Look, I mean, you just want to have something where there's some green field, right? And it's a very crowded space. So I am a little jaded when somebody comes to me with an opportunity to gain efficiency with audience media buying. Only because, and it's not because there's not an opportunity to provide improvement. It's just that everyone is using the same words, and there's a lot of solutions in the marketplace. So it's hard to break through. That's not to say that there aren't some things that are really interesting these days. The opportunity to use emotional drivers to improve an advertising, media, marketing experience. AI is really improving and providing something that hasn't been there. But I want the processes to come along on the buying side to a point where it's not something that's happening in a petri dish outside of the normal processes, because agencies have to run very hard just to get their jobs done with the tools that they have. And if you provide something that's so different than what they're doing, then you're not going to be in the main flow of how things are happening. The other thing that is happening that we talked about is that established players are finding ways to weave new solutions into what they offer. So you just have to be on the lookout for that. But that is not to say that we won't make investments in advertising and marketing. It's just that they've got to hurdle all of these, existing solutions that exist.
One space we didn't talk about, I'm really excited about, is advanced manufacturing and the industrial Internet of Things.
Mm-hmm.
Again, when I think about AI, I tend to think about data, algorithms, and processing.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we have way more data than we ever had before on factory floors, in supply chain logistics, in manufacturing facilities. And it's because the cost of sensors has gotten so cheap.
Yeah.
It used to be to make, say, a GPS sensor plus a battery. That was $500. Even just 10 years ago. And 5 years ago, it was probably $50.
Yeah.
Today, you can do it for $10.
Yeah.
And it's starting to be throwaway cheap. And that means we can just measure the world in ways we've never been able to measure before. And that creates a lot of good opportunities to optimize all sorts of things. So I do think there's a lot of potential for advanced manufacturing, for logistics, for all these areas of really doing physical things, we can now digitize and make much more efficient and better.
Yeah.
There's also some interesting social themes, which is many workers in manufacturing are getting older and older. Many workers in trucking are getting older and older. And it's really hard for people in those industries to hire new workers. So what they like is systems that say, okay, well, maybe with sensors we need fewer people to do what we've done before. We also maybe need less human expertise. So we can train someone more quickly, or we can use sensors and analytics to make the job a lot easier. That's a theme we like a lot. We're investors in a company called Upskill that makes an AR system to do advanced manufacturing. And the great thing about that is instead of having to train a worker on something that may take months and months to learn, you can just show her instructions on what she needs to do.
So she wears a headgear.
Yeah, exactly. So she wears like a HoloLens kind of system. And then when she sees the world, any information you want, you can overlay on it. So if she needs to know, how to change an air filter in a big system or how to tweak something, you can actually show her instructions and she just needs to.
So the other end of the
Right,
system is a live person going through with her.
So it's actually a machine learning system. So it's voice based, and she can call up kind of any help or instruction she wants. So it's a long way from, it's not quite the Matrix, but the same idea of saying, hey, I need to fly this helicopter. Download that skill set into me.
I think you're also an investor in Tala, I know, and I think that there's a similar dynamic happening with that. It's the IT team that's trying to serve the entire corporation with, the small little requests that they have. How do I change my password? It's taking the monkey off their back for all the little things that they could answer. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, a lot of automation. No, that's true. I mean, I almost feel like it would be instructive. I remember, I'm dating myself. This is back in the 90s when red herring actually was a business. There was actually, I remember there's one chart. These are the market sizes of all the industries, right? Healthcare being, I think, was one of the largest, and manufacturing and yada yada. Like, it would be interesting to actually take a look at that histogram and say, hey, let's go through each of these and see how AI could apply within it and in each of the subsystems. I do think that on the flip side, though, some of the things that I've seen may be a little bit too advanced. Right? I think one of you, I think Sarah, you might be speaking to it just now, which is maybe in the marketing space where sometimes it does take time for the solution, even though it is indeed a better solution, to seep in. I think one of the ones that I've seen, I did recently, over a year ago, is in the diagnostic space, Path AI. So they're
We're not, no.
I thought you were. Okay.
Yeah. So
We're in talk.
Okay.
so you guys don't know Path, and they're doing some awesome stuff in terms of diagnostics, so high-res scans and feature extraction. Right? I think one of I think they're going to do great things. I think one of the tweaks in the beginning, as I was talking to them, was always, hey, if you are going in to replace the pathologist, how are they going to say yes to you, right? Because even though it makes sense at the organization level, the group level may actually, you're going to have some immune response to that.
And even if they want these kinds of systems, you have to figure out how you fit into the way they do things.
Exactly.
The way they work.
Yeah. So this is I think there's a whole other theme around, AI in itself. I mean, I think you said it right? It's a tool. You still have to wrap it around the app. What is the problem that you're solving, and how do you actually deploy that in a way that people are saying, yeah, we can bake this in.
Exactly.
And I think what you're getting at is, sometimes these systems are doing things where they make a decision on their own. If I'm doing a speech recognition engine, I take audio in and I spit out text. It's pretty simple. But for something like a clinical setting where I need to tell a doctor how to diagnose a patient, I need to convince the doctor of that. And so interpretability is really important.
And trust, too. I think that with a lot of these AI solutions, they're very good at coming to the right answer,
Yeah.
but they can't explain why it's the right answer.
The black box
Right.
problem of AI.
So
Right.
it's just, I think, the perception of the
And
workers.
it's particularly bad in deep learning. Like deep learning has a big interpretability problem, which is, they are these black boxes. They're these wonderful systems that produce the right answer, but they don't really give you a lot of intuitions around why it made that decision.
Yeah. We have 5 minutes left. I think we covered most of the important questions. Maybe we'll take the last 5 minutes. Anything that we didn't cover that you think is sort of hot on your list that you want to talk about?
Well, you guys are the tech geeks of the three of us, and I'm kind of curious to know what is the disadvantage of being a legacy company that wants to add AI, and what's the advantage too? Because you can look at it from two standpoints. Legacy company already has customers. It's in the marketplace. It's generating revenue. Is there an opportunity to change the wheels on the bus as the bus is rolling down the hill, and actually, make yourself into, a company that won't say AI necessarily, but to use these new technologies to achieve these new things? Or is there really an advantage of starting from the ground up?
Yeah, I think large companies have a lot of advantages. I think you've gotten at them, which is, they understand the problem, they have a good relationship with their customers. They also typically have a lot of really interesting data. I was talking with a company that's one of the largest security door makers in the world. They make doors for stores, so at night it closes and locks the store down. They also make camera systems and all sorts of things. And they're trying to go through that exact situation right now, which is they want to be more digital. They want to start using machine learning to do what they do. But the great thing that they have is, okay, if they hire and spin up a team, they've got data from thousands and thousands of customers and, millions and millions of hours of footage that they can use as kind of inputs into what they want to do. So it's a well-defined problem and interesting data. I do think there's cultural changes that they need to go through, which is really hard. I think becoming an organization that's focused on software and technology is hard. And I think machine learning is an interesting kind of software. I do think it actually follows a different kind of development methodology than traditional software. I actually don't think like Agile and Scrum work all that well in AI. It just doesn't lend itself to kind of incremental work. I think we've gotten used to in building software. We said a lot of the companies we invest in is they try to throw Scrum at building these kinds of machine learning systems, and it just doesn't work that well.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think the analogy of, pre-internet, think about, a stodgy insurance company that existed, Liberty Mutual, right? Existed pre-internet, post-internet. Think about the shift they did that make, like pre and post that. It was a long running process, but now you can probably buy insurance on your website and get a quote and all that stuff. Took them a while to get there. I actually think, Drew, to your point, right, the paradigm shift, there'll be yet another paradigm shift here. And it may be actually, the delta is a little bit bigger than the internet delta. And I think that we'll get there for no other reason than this requires data. I mean, ultimately, this thing is powered by data. And in some ways, I actually think, Sarah, to your question, I think the power center of gravity in some ways may actually swing back, I would argue, to the incumbents, right? I mean, I think about the Googles and the Microsofts of the world. I mean, for the longest time, I think people, certainly think of them as passe, but now with a whole new AI wave, I actually think that they have a moat around the data. I mean, think about the amount of data that they get from usage and the like. They own that. Really hard to rebuild that. I think the implications then go to, if you are a startup in AI, what are the exits, right? So far it's been sort of I'm buying an AI company that's well pedigreed. I'm paying NFL quarterback salaries per head, right? It's like $3-4 million per head right now on average. That's going to go away at some point. Maybe, I don't know. I'm curious to hear you guys thought. So yeah, I think AI, the word is meaningless, right? You still have to make a business out of it. Doesn't matter whether you are an AI company or not. You still got to be a business. You got to be a growing business. But yeah, I mean, do you guys think that this whole wave of exits, we're buying this company because of AI talent, do you think that'll go away as the AI democratizes?
I think that, the talent acquisitions right now are, it's been a function of not having AI talent, right? But, we were just talking about this before we started filming that, there's a huge wave of talent coming. So the most popular class at MIT is AI 101, right? There's 700 seats. They're completely oversubscribed. You have to take a math test to get into it. So we are churning out a new breed of technologists, and that is going to make an impact to the development that's happening. I mean, I'm really hoping that what ends up getting acquired is the true value that's built by those types of people. And talent acquisition is kind of always, it's always a factor. It happens, and it's because of dynamics on both sides, right? It's because they're willing to kind of let the dream go, but also be part of something bigger.
I think too, a lot of large organizations view it as a way to bootstrap their efforts, and once they've kind of bought that anchor company, they kind of
they build around that.
And then rather than paying $3 million per engineer, they can just say, this engineer is really great. We're going to give her a huge bonus to come join us.
Well, we're 4:01. We're 1 minute ahead. Our cutoff time. Well, thanks so much, guys. This has been a treat for us.
Thanks a lot.
It's a great
we'll have you guys back again. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us.